In the last stream, we were slowly but surely working our way towards this multi-block structure right here, the circuit fabricator, which is finally going to allow us to get into either refined storage or applied energistics 2, because we now have the capability to make either the AE2 processors or the refined storage processors, which are of course required to get into either of those mods. To get there, we did go on a bit of a detour to get this guy right here, our level 5 Certus Quartz Chicken, which between streams I have had in the Chicken Trainer with our level 5 seeds to slowly but surely level this guy up. He is currently level 7 out of 128. Not a massive level improvement, but that should mean that he produces slightly more Certus Quartz than he was producing previously. Not that that matters massively, because we've already got, I think, more than enough Certus Quartz for today's episode. But before we get started on setting up what I think is going to be a refined storage system, there are a few small things that I want to work on around the base to make our lives a little bit easier. The first of which is a suggestion from the Twitch chat to craft this jewel crafting station. The idea here is that we can use the jewel crafting station to make jewelry, and specifically, apparently, we can use this to give ourselves creative flight, which is going to make it just that little bit easier and quicker for us to move around the base. It's also not particularly expensive. It requires 4 archwood planks, 2 copper ingots, and 1 lapis. We are making the archwood planks over here, and so if we take one of those, craft that down, that is that done. And then of course lapis we do have being made over in here. We'll take one of those, and copper of course is also available to us. The only slightly tricky part about this recipe is that it does require 750 source in the world engine. Now, we can do what we did last time, which is take our jar full of source over to the world engine and then use our Dominion wand to link the source jar to the world engine to allow it to pull source from there. But it turns out we can also use the BBL routers mod here if we get another importer. Let me make a few hoppers here. If we get another importer and another exporter, we can actually export from the source jar to the world engine, because you'll see at the bottom here there are source upgrades, which, much like the energy and item upgrades we've seen before, allow the routers to move source. To make this, we need 4 iron and 1 source gem block, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, we do have a storage drawer with almost a stack of source gem blocks ready to go, and so if we just do something like that, we should then be able to very easily craft up our first source upgrade, which can move 10 per operation, which is not particularly fast. I guess I probably should have looked at the higher tier first here. I make the same mistake every time, because the way this works, you don't have to craft the lower tier upgrades before you craft the higher tier upgrades. You can just go straight in at the higher tier upgrades. And so real quick, I'm going to go straight in for the tier 2 upgrade, and I'm just going to throw away that tier 1 upgrade. It's not going to be very useful for us. So really what we should be able to do is just place an exporter onto this jar, like so. Then if we head on through to the world engine, if this works as intended, we can place down our importer, we can put in our items, like so, and then from there, all we need to do is use our wrench to right-click the importer, head on back home, right-click on the exporter, like that, and in theory, that should now be sending source through to the world engine, and if enough source is being sent, we should have a jewel crafting station. Nice. So with that, I believe what we should now be able to do is place the jewel crafting station down. And so in here, we can make either a simple ring, a gem set ring, a simple amulet, or a simple chain. I believe we want a simple ring, and then there is a giant list here of all of the applicable materials that we can use for our ring. I believe that we can use a simple material like copper to make this work, and then I'm being told that if we put a Celesti gem onto that ring, it will give us flight. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe we have completed a quest in General Tech that actually gives us a few more Celesti gems, not that they will be particularly difficult for us to make in the first place. And so if we make a copper ring, that gives us a copper band with an attack speed buff, which I think is just the buff you get from copper. I think we actually want a gem set ring here, because that's going to allow us to put in both the copper and the Celesti gem, and you'll see here that we now have the creative flight modifier from the Celesti gem, and so now if we place that into one of our ring slots, like so, we should be able to fly. Look at that. It's just that easy, and we now have creative flight, which makes it just that little bit faster and easier for us to get around the base. So now that we have that taken care of, the next thing that we desperately need to tackle, of course, is our storage situation, because all of these chests are completely rammed full, and we are still running into this problem over here where the pipes are putting the items in the wrong slots, despite the fact that we have slots that can still hold more items. And so we need to get started with refined storage. To do that, down at the bottom of the storage quest line here, we start with the Refined Storage 2 quest, which wants us to make quartz enriched iron, machine casing, processor binding, and the processors. They come in basic, improved, and advanced forms. The very first thing we want to do is take some Certus quartz crystals, as well as a stack or two of iron, and a stack or two of redstone. And the idea here is that we can drop redstone, iron, and Certus quartz into the water to get quartz enriched iron. You don't have to do this a stack at a time. You can put one of each item in, but if you put a stack in at a time, it will do the full stack. It will convert all of them into quartz enriched iron, and that gets us 2 stacks. I'll do a few of these here. I feel like we might as well get as much of this as we possibly can, because we are going to need a lot of it to set up a vast refined storage network. For now, I think that 4 stacks should be good enough to get us up and running. And then back over here, if we want to make the machine casing, we do have to combine that quartz enriched iron with a steel casing from Mekanism. Between streams, I have gone ahead and put some more coal into the enrichment chamber to get more of this enriched carbon, and I've gone ahead and put some more iron through the basic infusing factory twice to get us some more steel dust, which we can of course go ahead and throw into here. I'm not quite sure how we've ended up with ender pearls in here. I think, again, what has happened there is I've used ender pearls in a recipe that's pulled them from that chest into the crafting station, and then when I clear the crafting station, it puts them back into any chest, not necessarily that chest, and so it's put them in here, and now it's smelting them into ender shards, which is one of the reasons why we kind of need to move away from the sophisticated storage system that we're currently using. The good news is we have a ton of ender pearls, and we now have a ton of steel, and so in theory, we should be able to make a couple of these steel casings here just as soon as we get some more glass. And a little bit of glass later, we can make a bunch of steel casing. Again, I'm just going to craft all of what we can at the moment, because we are going to need quite a few of these machine casings. I feel like we might as well go ahead and make those in bulk. The processor binding is also super easy. In fact, I'm fairly certain that we should just be able to shift click that in and make a stack of those. We totally can. Fantastic. And then from there, we just need to get one of these processors. These are all made in exactly the same way. They're all made in the circuit fabricator with a printed silicon, a processor binding, and then either an engineering circuit, a logic circuit, or an iron ingot. And so the first thing that they all share is printed silicon. This is made, again, in the circuit fabricator with a silicon gem. We get this by smelting Certus quartz dust. And so if we were to go and grab another stack of Certus quartz coming in very quickly from our Certus quartz chicken, we can go ahead and crush that down in here. And again, if we wanted to, we could tap that just to make it a little bit faster. And once we have that Certus quartz dust, we can then, of course, smelt it into these silicon gems, at which point we can just throw that into our circuit fabricator, which is then going to convert that into the silicon presses. As we mentioned last episode, we can put in up to 10 acceleration cards. I'm not entirely certain on what the total power usage is going to be for having 10 of those in there. Let's give that a quick check. If I throw all 38 of these into here, it does tank the power pretty quickly, but it also makes the printed silicon very fast. And we do, of course, have the power being generated. Our current problem is just a throughput problem, because whilst we're generating 50,000 RF per tick, we are only able to transfer just shy of 1,000 RF per tick. And so we could really do with looking at getting the higher tier RF upgrades. This one here does require Fortron infused ingots, which means we are going to have to get the Enderic infuser, which looks like it requires a lot of world engine upgrades that we don't currently have available to us. And so it's also quite possible that our best option here might be to get a higher tier universal cable and just extract directly from the energy cube, run that over to the circuit fabricator to give it access to that higher power bandwidth. For now, though, let's take our printed silicon, and initially we can just combine that with iron. That's going to be a very easy first step for us. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to dump my quartz enriched iron into here, because we can stock quite a bit. And then over here, we're going to combine the iron, the processor binding, and then I'm going to split the stack of silicon into 3, like that. That's going to very quickly get us a bunch of basic processors. We then do have to go through a bit of a 2-stage process for the next ones because we need gold and we need diamonds. And I think essentially here we have to start by putting the gold in on its own to get a bunch of these logic circuits. And then we have to do the same with diamonds as well to get a bunch of the engineering circuits. And then from there, we can then take those and combine them again with the printed silicon to get ourselves some improved processors and to get ourselves some advanced processors. Nice. That basically completes that entire quest line. And so now that we have all of those processors ready to go, we can look at making the refined storage controller, which is the heart of the refined storage system. To make it, we have to go back to the world engine and we need 1 machine casing, 1 advanced processor, 4 quartz enriched iron, and 4 more silicon gems. Boom, 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 and boom. That's probably going to make more controllers than I intended to make. Actually, I shouldn't have put so much of everything in. It used like 56 quartz enriched iron or something like that. So I'm probably going to make like 8 controllers here, which was not my intention. But we do now have the refined storage controller. Nice. Also, it turns out in a previous episode, when we went through to the maze, we got Fortron blocks, these guys right here. We did use these to upgrade our world engine, but it turns out you can also go ahead and downcraft these into the Fortron infused ingots that we were just looking at for the tier 3 RF upgrade. And so it turns out right away here, we can actually make at least 1 tier 3 RF upgrade. And in theory, we could make another one if we wanted to as well. And this one alone adds 12,000 RF per tick of throughput to our exporter, taking us to almost 13,000 in total, which should hopefully now mean that this circuit fabricator is almost always full on power whenever we try and do some crafts. So I think, going to end up putting the controller down kind of right here where our crafting station is. We'll hold on to it for now though, because in order to get started with refined storage, we do need at the very least 1 of these disk drives. I'll bookmark that. We also need at least a crafting grid. I'll bookmark that. And we need at least 1 storage disk. There are multiple tiers of these. We'll come back to that in just a second. The disk drive should be fairly straightforward, or it would have been straightforward had I just not spent all of my machine casing and advanced processors on making a ton of controllers. Real quick, let me make some more advanced casing and some more processors, and then we'll look at making all of these items. And a little bit more machine casing and advanced processor crafting later. We have everything for the disk drive. Again, for now, we'll put that down right about there, and I'll put the controller next to it like this. We'll probably end up moving this stuff in a second because we're going to get rid of everything that is here and slot that into place. But again, before we do that, we do need to first make a regular grid. This requires a construction core and a destruction core, which is very straightforward. The construction core is a basic processor with glowstone, and then the destruction core is the same but with nether quartz. That should be everything for our basic grid. The basic grid allows you to view inside of your system, put items in, take items out, but you can't craft within the basic grid. That is where the crafting grid comes into play. For that, we just need 1 of our regular crafting tables, and boom, we have everything for the crafting grid. Nice. And so now we're just missing a storage disk, and as I mentioned a second ago, there are different tiers of storage disk, and basically the higher tier you go, the more items you can store. The entry-level one here is the 1K storage disk. This can store up to 1,024 items. It goes all the way up to a 64K disk, at least in the base version of the mod. We do have some add-ons here that take it even higher, like extra storage, but the base version goes up to 64K, which can store 65,536 items. So to make these, you craft a storage part with redstone, glass, and quartz enriched iron. The 1K storage part is just silicon, iron, glass, and redstone. And then the way this works is you craft 3 of these 1K parts with basic processors, iron and redstone, to make a 4K part, and then 3 of the 4K parts to make a 16K part, and then 3 of the 16K parts to make a 64K part. I don't think we're quite going to need a 64K part just yet. I think a 4K or a 16K might do the trick. And so let me see here. How many of the 1K parts can we make? We can make 5 of these with what we have, but I think our limiting factor is either going to be glass or silicon. I'm going to go ahead and make 9 of these. That's going to allow us to make 3 4K parts, which is then enough for 1 16K part, which I think is going to be a good starting off point for us. And a little bit of silicon later, we can go up to 9 1K storage parts. Do we then have what it takes to make the 4K parts? It looks like the answer is maybe, but we are very quickly running out of inventory space. Again, hopefully a problem that we are right on the brink of solving. One thing I also did not do is I did not put the source upgrade into this exporter. It turns out we already had enough source in our world engine to complete the craft, and so it wasn't strictly necessary. That is completely fine. We have what it takes to make 3 of these, and then from there, we should hopefully be able to upgrade that straight to a 16K part. And with that 16K part, we can then make our 16K drive, which we're then going to throw directly into our disk drive. Like this. Again, we've run into a bit of a weird issue where it seems to have put redstone into the disk drive because it's next to the crafting station here. Again, hopefully something that we're not going to have to worry about too much in just a second. Now, all we need to do is power the controller, and powering the controller is going to be as simple as just getting another one of these importers, throwing it down onto the controller, and then linking it to our pre-existing power exporter. Right-click here, and right-click here. At which point, this should come online. It totally does. And now we can put all of our items into the crafting grid, and you'll see that that starts to slowly but surely fill up the 16,000 slots that we have in our storage disk. And so, real quick, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to slowly but surely take all of the stuff that we have in these chests right here, in these barrels, and move them over to our 16K drive. I'm hoping we have enough space in there for that to work. And then once we have that up and running, I do want to look at kind of changing the way that we currently store items over here, because as we've seen, this isn't really working. And there we go. Everything has now been taken out of all of those barrels and chests, even out of my backpack as well. I've completely emptied everything and placed it into the crafting grid. And you'll see that we only really used about half of the 16K storage disk, so 2 4Ks might have sufficed, but we now have some extra space for the future. I am going to shimmy this back by one, which is actually pretty easy to do as well. I'm going to embed the controller in the ground as well, like that, and I'm just going to put the disk drive right about here. The disk does retain its inventory. You don't lose the items when you break and replace it, and so we can just do something like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and place down the power importer on the bottom like that, and then using the pipe connector, we're going to once again right-click here and right-click here. So now that we have this up and running, I do want to come back to this setup over here, and I think we can fix this by investing more in the functional storage mod. We do already have a couple of storage drawers from the functional storage mod dotted around the base, but right now our refined storage system doesn't have access to those items. Also, real quick, I like to have mine set to sorting direction descending, and to sort by quantity as well. So the item we have the most of is at the top and the least of at the bottom. Just a personal preference there. But now, if we get a drawer controller, which is this guy right here, the storage controller, we should be able to link all of our storage drawers to that controller, and then from there we can use an external storage from refined storage to connect the refined storage system to that drawer controller, which will in turn then give our refined storage system access to everything that the storage controller has access to. So to make this, we just need one redstone comparator. We then do need to get 3 more storage drawers. Regular storage drawers will do just fine. So if we do something like this and get at least 3 of those, we are then just missing 1 diamond and 4 steel plates. And for now, I do think the steel plates are going to have to be made using our foundry. So let's quickly drop 3 steel ingots over into here. We do already have our plate mold ready to go, and so as soon as those are melted, we can just pull those out, and that should be basically everything that we need. Of course, again, right now our system does not have access to the items in here either, which is why it didn't think a second ago that we had any diamonds, but for now we can grab those manually to complete the craft. And 4 steel plates later, we have the storage controller. Now, the super nifty thing about the storage controller from functional storage is that you can connect drawers to it wirelessly. To make that happen, we do have to get the linking tool, which is this guy right here. The linking tool, very similar situation. We need some paper, which we of course have from our sugarcane, and we also need to get, you guessed it, another one of these regular storage drawers. But once we have the linking tool, we can then right-click on our drawer controller, and it does show us the area within which we can link drawers. Now, one slight downside to the current setup we have is you'll see that our storage drawers are just a little bit outside of the radius of the storage controller. The good news is that we can go ahead and add in these upgrades that come in the form of copper, gold, diamond, and netherite to increase the radius. You'll see right at the bottom, the copper upgrade, which is the entry-level upgrade, multiplies the connector radius by 2, the gold one multiplies it by 4, the diamond by 6, and then the netherite by 8 for a massive area covered. And this is really not too difficult for us to make because we have a ton of copper. We just need 2 blocks of copper, and then boom, we have everything for the copper upgrade, which immediately, if we shift right-click to open the storage controller, we can place in, and again, if we get our linking tool out, you'll see that now the range is much, much larger. Doesn't quite fully cover our base just yet, but does give us access to all of our pre-existing drawers. And so now, if we go through and right-click on all of these drawers, we will see all of those items available in our system. Just as soon, of course, as we make the external storage. For this, we do need one more destruction core and one more of the construction cores, and we're also going to need some cable from refined storage as well. This is a little bit different. This requires quartz-enriched copper, which I have not seen before, but thankfully in this pack can be crafted in the grid. We don't have to drop it into the water, and once we have the cable, we can make the external storage. The cable is also how we connect all of our refined storage devices together. We've put these directly on the controller, but if we wanted to, we could run cable to connect these up really anywhere in the base. And I'm going to assume as well that the facades we made previously also work on the refined storage cable. So if we wanted to going forward, we could have the cable running in the floor, and then we could just cover it up with the facades that we already have. For now though, all we need to do is place our external storage onto the storage controller. That's going to immediately connect it up to our system. And now you'll see that we have access to the sand, the cobblestone, the lava eggs, and the wheat seeds that are currently in our storage drawers. One thing we should do real quick to kind of prevent the same problem we were having last time where the wrong items get put in the wrong drawers is that we should go ahead and make a configuration tool here. We just need some more paper for this. And the configuration tool, which apparently needs even more paper than we have, we should look at automating the sugarcane, I think, whether that's via a system like this where we have an item collector collecting sugarcane as it's broken, or whether it's just by putting sugarcane into a garden cloche. I think having that being made automatically for us would be a good thing. But the idea here with the configuration tool is that we can shift right click to swap modes, and if we swap to locking mode, we can then, I believe, just right click on the controller, and that's going to lock all of the drawers to whatever item is already in them. And so now, even if all of a given item is taken out of a drawer, that drawer will still be locked to that given resource. And so, for example, we're not going to end up with 1,000 ender pearls in this drawer, preventing our cobblestone generator from putting cobblestone in there. And so now what I'm thinking is, instead of using the Oratech pipes here to extract from our unearthers into these two drawers here, we can use some more of the routers to extract from these unearthers and send items directly to the drawer controller. And then if we have some more drawers, for example, embedded in the walls maybe around our base that house items like diamonds, like redstone, like copper, like lapis, we can then just have all of those stored in storage drawers that are locked to those specific resources. The only slight wrinkle in that plan is that we do have to send certain things, like all of these chunks, to this chest, because we do still need to smelt those via our emerald furnace into the final ingots. That should be pretty doable though. If we were to go ahead and get another exporter, I'm going to make 3 of these, 1 for each of our unearthers, and then let's go ahead and make 2 importers as well. From there, I do see that the BBL routers mod does have a tag filter option. To make this, we need to make the item upgrade 1, and then we need to combine that with 2 regular Minecraft hoppers. And I'm assuming that what we can do here, if you press F3 and H, you can toggle whether or not advanced tooltips are shown. And in here, if we now hold shift, you'll see that we can see the tags associated with these chunks, and you'll see that all of these have the C::chunks tag. And so what I think we should be able to do is place an importer on here like this, and then with the tag filter, we can go ahead and change this to C::chunks like this, and you'll see now it's showing all of the different chunks. And so now if we were to get another one of the item upgrades that allow our routers to move items, we should then be able to place this into the exporter, of course, and then in here we can just right click this into the importer. And so now this should be only able to accept the chunks that are in here. So let's go ahead and delete some of these pipes. We can go ahead and automine that, I guess, because we're not going to need any of them. And for example, now there are some chunks in here. So if I were to put an exporter down like this, put in the item upgrade, we might want to upgrade this to a faster item upgrade because the tier 1 can only move 1 item per operation. And I believe by default, the exporter works at a rate of 1 item per 40 ticks. So it's going to move 1 item every 2 seconds, which is not particularly fast. But just to see here, if we put this in and then we use our connector, we can hopefully right click on here like this, right click on here like that, and it should move only the chunks through into this drawer. And it totally is. It's moving the iron chunks very slowly into the drawer. There are a few things we can do to make things faster. We can look at getting the higher tier item upgrades. The tier 2 one here, for example, goes from 1 item per operation up to 8. And then on top of that, we can also look at making the speed upgrades as well. This allows extraction from the exporter every 30 ticks at tier 1, and then every 20 ticks at tier 2, 10 ticks at tier 3, and every 1 tick at tier 4. And again, the tier 2 looks like the sweet spot for us right now. If we take that out, it's going to make it just that little bit faster. And if we replace it with the tier 2 upgrade, that's going to do 8 items every 30 ticks as opposed to our current 1 item every 20 ticks, which should hopefully be fast enough to empty this out, especially once we've cleared through the backlog. And so if we now do the same thing with the other 2 unearthers, we're going to put an exporter onto each of these like this. And like this, we're going to connect those all up to this one importer. Right-click here, and then right-click here, and right-click here. And then finally, of course, we're going to make 2 more of those tier 2 item upgrades, 1 and 2, and 2 more of the tier 2 speed upgrades, 1 and 2. That's going to allow us to move all of the chunks that we're generating from all of our unearthers through to this drawer. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to link these same exporters to our draw controller as well. So if we take this importer and place it down on here like this, we can then right click here and right click again on the same exporter like this. That's now connected over here. And so now if we go ahead and get some more storage drawers, we can then start to store all of the other items that are not chunks in those storage drawers. So for example here, I've made another one of these framed drawers, just like we did right at the start of the pack for that one drawer right there. And what I've gone ahead and done here is combined that with some cut borderless brick column, which you can get by putting brick into the chisel. And then I've also combined that up with some of our large smooth stone tiles that we already have. And the idea here is that, for example, let's say we wanted to start filling this back wall with storage drawers, we could place the storage drawers in like this. We could then, if we wanted to go ahead and lock those drawers like that, and if I were to then grab, let's say, some diamonds and some emeralds out of here, if we go ahead and configure those to diamonds and to emeralds, what we should start to see happening is we should start to see things like the diamonds and emeralds being extracted from this unearther here round into the drawer controller, just of course as soon as we link our new drawers here and here to the system. And there we go. It went straight from 10 to 18. And in a second here, we'll see that go from 3 to 6. Perfect. So now it is taking all of the items out of here that have their own drawers, and it's placing those items directly into those drawers. And so real quick, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the exact same thing for all of the other resources that we're producing here. And then on top of that, I'll also do it for this chest as well. We'll get another exporter and we'll link that to our pre-existing importer. So that being this guy here and then this guy here. So we're going to right click and we're going to right click like that. And then we're going to have all of the ingots and stuff go to their own drawers as well, so that everything gets smelted, sent up, and then put into its own respective locked storage drawer. And then in the future, we could look at putting void upgrades in here. We could look at putting storage upgrades in here, whatever it is we want to do to prevent the system from overflowing. One final thing is that we should probably look at making compacting drawers for our ingots. These are pretty much the exact same as regular drawers, the only difference being that they can hold an item in multiple states. For example, and also real quick, we should link these 3 over here up as well. Let me lock, and link. That gives our system access to all of the wood that we're producing as well. So that makes it a lot easier for us to make a large number of single drawers like so, which we can then use to make our compacting drawer. Like this, we're going to use the same texture, the bordered stone and the large smooth stone tiles. And the idea here, for those that don't know, is that if you were to, for example, put some copper in here, it makes the copper available in nugget, ingot, and block form. And then, of course, when our system has access to that, our system can then access that in all of its forms, making it a lot easier for us to craft things like the frame compacting drawer, because we don't first have to manually craft our iron into nuggets to then craft the frame compacting drawer. The resource is already available in block and nugget form directly inside the drawer. And not too long later, we've set up a wall of compacting drawers for all of the different ingots that we're producing with our unearthers. And we've also moved the diamonds, the emeralds, the redstone, the lapis, and the coal into compacting drawers as well, so that we can access all of those in block form. Over here, we have clay, bone meal, and bricks. Going forward, we shouldn't actually be making any more bricks because the clay should not be sent to this chest because it's not a chunk and so is not carried over by this tag filter, but we do already have thousands of bricks in our system, and so it did make sense to have a drawer for it. One thing we do need to do here real quick is look at making some more chests, and then also look at making some more of these copper upgrades, because over here we've already filled up on clay and we've already filled up on bricks. Putting in the copper upgrade multiplies the block item storage by 8, and so it takes us from the default storage rate of 2,000 up to 16,000 items per drawer, which means over here we're now moving out all of the clay and bricks. Slowly but surely we can go ahead and accelerate this. We could also, if we wanted to, put in a second item upgrade to move 16 items per operation instead of just 8, but I think in the long run that's not going to be necessary, because I think we're not actually producing items that fast. We just have a big backlog right now, which you can see we can clear very quickly just using the temporal pouch. And there we go, all of the items are now clear. And in here we do need to manually move this bone meal out, because of course the bone meal isn't going to here going forward. It's going to get sent automatically over to the drawer, but initially we do need to get a upgrade into here like that, and we need to move over the 10,000 or so bone meal that we have in here manually. And again, not too long later, I've moved over all of the clay, the bone meal, the bricks, and the sticks to their own respective drawers. And so now over here, this chest is completely empty, which is intentional. And down here, this chest should only ever have chunks in it if we take out the last couple of bits that are not chunks. And so now all the chunks are going to get sent to here to be smelted into ingots, sent up to this chest, and then of course transported directly to the drawer controller, placed in their respective functional storage drawers. And now everything that we're making is once again accessible by the system, and we're not going to run into the problem of the wrong items being put into the wrong chests. One thing we should do in here on the external storage, you can change the priority. I'm going to set this to like 100. Basically, we want to make sure that the refined storage system tries to put things into the storage controller before it tries to put things into our storage disk. And so by setting the priority on this higher than the priority of the disk drive, you'll see this has a priority of 0. That means that now if I were to take some redstone from here and I were to put it into the crafting grid like this, it's going to try and put it into the drawer controller and therefore into the storage drawer first, as opposed to putting it into the disk drive. One thing we should definitely do though here is we should get another external storage, and we should place that down directly onto our other sophisticated storage chest, because this one over here should work quite well for us actually. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put this down right about here. And then in here, I'm actually going to change the access mode to this. Right now, it's set to insert and extract. I'm going to set this to extract only. That's going to allow our refined storage system to take items out of this chest, but it's not going to allow the refined storage system to put items into this chest. You'll see that up until now, it has actually put a lot of redstone in here. I think some of this redstone is probably from killing witches, but I think the majority of that redstone is just our previous system putting it in here unintentionally, which is not what we want to happen going forward. And so using the extract only mode means that our system can take items out, but it will never put items in, which I think is perfect. One thing we can do here is we can get our pipe connector, which is from the pipe connector mod. This does require some string, which we can make real quick with some industrial hemp fiber. And the idea here is that this makes it just that little bit easier for us to run cable all around the base. So with this, we can place the cable in our offhand, the cable being any pipe that you want to lay down. And then if we shift right click here, we can set position 1. Then if we shift right click on, let's say, the bottom of this, we can set position 2. And then if we shift right click to open this, we can click place pipes, and it's going to place down pipes between those two positions, automatically connecting that up for us without us having to do any work whatsoever. And so now in here, we can see that we have access to all of our ender pearls, all of our rotten flesh, all of the mob drops from our mob farm. And so now we do officially have access again to everything that we had before, but it's now much more structured, much more organized, and connected to our refined storage system. And so now that we have that, we can look at expanding our refined storage system. There are two key ways in this episode that I do want to expand our refined storage system. The first is that I would like to get a wireless crafting grid, if that is possible for us. I will bookmark that like so. And then I would also like to look at getting our first auto crafter down as well, so that we can start offloading some of the regular crafts that we're going to be doing to the auto crafter and have the refined storage system do it for us to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier. We'll start with the wireless crafting grid here, because this is going to allow us to access our refined storage system from anywhere within a defined range of the controller. To make this, we need one more crafting grid, which again should be pretty straightforward, but it looks like we need even more improved processes. We also need, you guessed it, another construction and another destruction core. This is one of those things where the autocrafting is going to help us out tremendously, because if we can have our autocrafter, for example, make the construction and deconstruction cores for us, then we're not going to have to manually craft those every time going forward. We should have a bunch of the logic circuits lying around. We do. Do we have any printed silicon? We do not, but we can make some. We do, of course, have a bunch of processor binding. And so real quick, if we do one of these, we have all 5 of our acceleration cards in there now. So this is moving very quickly. And then we can do something like this. I'm not going to turn them all into improved processors just yet, because we might need more of the basic or advanced. And for now, we do just need the 2 improved to make the grid. From there, we can make another crafting table and another crafting grid. And then that should be everything that we need for the wireless crafting grid. And it is. Now, to connect this, we do have to just shift right click it onto our controller, like so. It is now bound. And then finally, to get this working, we need to get a wireless transmitter. This guy right here. This is, again, very straightforward. 1 ender pearl, 1 machine casing, 1 advanced processor, and 6 quartz enriched iron. And we can place this down anywhere on our refined storage network. And this is now going to give us a 16 block range within which we can use our wireless crafting grid. Now, currently our wireless crafting grid is empty. We can charge it in our energy cube by putting it into the plus slot right here. Eventually, we might want to look at getting some kind of wireless charging set up so that we can use this without having to recharge it manually every time. But for now, if we are within a 16 block range of our wireless transmitter, we can open up the wireless crafting grid, and it's as if we opened up the regular crafting grid. We can even take this one step further if we go to Options, Controls, Keybinds, and type in wireless crafting grid. We can set this to any key. I like to set mine to Z. And then now, if we press Z whilst holding the wireless crafting grid, it just opens it for us. We can even go one step further and put this into the wireless crafting grid slot inside of our curios menu. And now it doesn't even take up an inventory slot, and we can still just press Z wherever we are in the world to do our crafting. I say wherever we are in the world. We are, of course, limited to 16 blocks of range right now. However, if we make some range upgrades, we can increase our default range quite a bit further. So the range upgrade, again, fairly straightforward. Ender pearls, we have thousands of them. Quartz enriched iron, we can make almost an infinite amount of. And then the regular upgrade is just glass, quartz enriched iron, and an improved processor. If we were to make, let's say, 4 of these, because I think that's what you can fit into here, we could then go ahead and craft up 4 range upgrades. And if we put all 4 of those in like that, that increases our maximum range to 48 blocks, which I believe for the time being is enough to cover the entire width of our base. And so now, effectively, no matter where we are in the base, we can just press Z and we can access all of the items that are in all of our drawers and in all of our disks from anywhere we like. And so now we can look at going one step further and making this autocrafter. The autocrafter does have to be made in the world engine. That's going to make it a little difficult to automate the autocrafting of the autocrafters. And I do think we'll probably bulk craft these a little bit. Let me bookmark all this stuff. How many machine casings do we have? We've got 8. I'll go ahead and make 4 autocrafters. For that, we're going to need 4 machine casing. We're going to need 16 quartz enriched iron, which is about half of what we have. That's perfect. We then also need to get 4 destruction, 4 construction, and 8 advanced processors. The advanced processors we have, and then do we have at least 8 basic processors, or we do not. However, we can, of course, make even more with iron, with printed silicon, and with processor binding. From there, of course, we can craft up 4 construction cores if we have 4 glowstone, which we totally do, and 4 deconstruction cores if we have 4 nether quartz, which we totally do. And so now we have to go back and phase our earlier mistake, because we have to take all of these controllers out of the world engine and replace it with the machine casing, the quartz enriched iron, the construction cores, the destruction cores, and the advanced processors. That is hopefully going to fairly quickly make us all of the autocrafters that we want. For now, I'll put these in my backpack, but we'll probably end up deleting these because I really don't think there's anything super useful that we can do with these going forward outside of them just taking up space in our system. So I'll take these though, and we'll do a quick /home to get us back to our base. And with these, we can now teach our system how to craft certain things for us. So the way this works is we can place these down really wherever we like. For now, I'll put one down, let's say right here. This one is going to be a general purpose autocrafter, so it really doesn't matter which way it faces. But just for the sake of it, let me get a wrench. I don't think we have to use the one from refined storage, but for simplicity, let's get the refined storage one. That can then be used to rotate that so that it points upwards. Again, not necessary for this particularly, but it makes it look a bit nicer. We do now need to get a pattern grid. That's this guy right here, made in a very similar way as before. You guessed it, we need another construction and another destruction core that can then be used to make a regular grid, and then we need to get ourselves at least one blank pattern. I am going to go ahead and make a few of these though, because we need one to actually make the pattern grid, which I will put down, I guess, probably right above here for now, like this, with the network transmitter right on top like that. But now in here, what we can do is we can encode patterns for different recipes. For example, if we wanted to teach our system how to make the construction and destruction cores, we can just click on the recipe, click move items, and then here we can click create pattern. And if we place that pattern into our autocrafter, now when we look for core in our system, you'll see that we have the option to craft a construction core. And all we need to do is click on it, specify how many we want to craft, let's say 3, and if we have the available items, in this case 3 basic processors and 3 glowstone, we can just click start, and the system is going to automatically craft those items for us. We can then do the exact same thing with the destruction core, encode the pattern, place it into the crafter, and our system now knows how to do that for us. We can take this one step further though, because we can also use these autocrafters on pre-existing machines like the circuit fabricator. Here, we do actually want to make sure this points up at the circuit fabricator because it's going to be inserting items into that circuit fabricator. This is another one of those situations where the pipe connector is going to help us out quite a bit, because here we're going to make some more cable. We're going to place that cable into our offhand. We're going to take our pipe connector. We're going to set the first point to be, let's say, right there. And we're going to set the second point to be right here. And then from there, I believe you can shift and scroll if you want the depth to be different. So if you want to move them further down, you can do that. For us, a depth of 0 is going to be fine. We can shift right click, place pipes. And again, it's just going to run cable all the way over, bringing this autocrafter online without us having to dig up the ground. And so now what we could look at doing, for example, is we could go ahead and look at automating the production of, let's say, the advanced processor. To do that, we have to first automate the production of the printed engineering circuit, which is a fairly straightforward recipe. So in here, if we go to the printed circuit recipe, we can go ahead and click move items, and we're going to teach our system that if it sends 1 diamond to the circuit fabricator, it's going to get 1 printed engineering processor back. You'll notice it's swapped from a crafting pattern to a processing pattern because this is not an actual crafting recipe. It's a processing recipe that uses a machine. And so here we're going to put this in. And now if we go and we type in engineering, you'll see that we have 30 engineering circuits. But if we take those out, we do have the option to craft it. If you want to craft it despite having items in, you can also control click, and that will go straight to the auto crafting option. And so now if we click start, it should send a diamond through to here, turn that into a printed engineering circuit. The only problem we run into is that the system currently has no way of getting that back from the circuit fabricator. That is where we can look at putting down a regular old importer. This again, fairly straightforward. And you'll see here that now, because our system knows how to make the destruction core, when we hover over the move items button, it glows orange. And so what we can do is we can, as the tooltip states, we can control click, and that's going to automatically pull up the auto crafting menu for the missing items. We can then click start like so. And then now if we go back to that importer, we actually have everything because our system has made that missing destruction core. We can then place that down right about here, connect that up with some cable, like so, and now that's going to import that engineering circuit from the circuit fabricator back around into the system. We could then go one step further, of course, and we can teach it how to make the advanced processor. For that, we are going to need another blank pattern because currently we are fully out of blank patterns, and I have a sneaking suspicion that for that, we're going to need some glass as well because we appear to be completely out of glass. We could probably do with getting a drawer set up for glass. That way, any glass that is made here is automatically extracted via that exporter and placed into the wall for us to use. We don't have to manually extract it ourselves in the future. And so now we can look at making another pattern, which requires more quartz-enriched iron. Of course it does. We are now completely out of quartz-enriched iron, and the quartz-enriched iron is one of those that's going to be a little tricky for us to automate, simply due to the fact that you can only make it one of 2 ways. That's either by dropping the 3 items into a puddle of water, like this, or by using a create mixer, which we don't currently have access to. It shouldn't be too difficult for us to set up a basic create system that would allow us to automate that in the not-so-distant future. For now, though, it's going to be a manual job for the time being. Thankfully, you do make a large amount of quartz-enriched iron all at once, and our chicken is making the Certus quartz fast enough to where I don't think it's going to be a problem for us. We can then, of course, go ahead and use that to make more blank patterns. I do think it's probably worth teaching our system here how to make blank patterns. So if we do this, and incurred. Now going forward, we can just request more of those for crafting as opposed to having to do it manually. But back to the advanced processor, we can encode this recipe and we can place it into this crafter. Now, one thing that we might want to do here is change the lock mode on our autocrafter. By default, it's set to lock never, but what that means is that if we were to, for example, request an advanced processor here, and let's imagine we didn't have any of the ingredients, the system would need to make a printed engineering circuit. It would also need to make a printed silicon as well. We can teach that real quick. Let me do another quick encode. If we do something like this, we can encode the silicon as well. And so now, if we were to request an advanced processor with none of the ingredients, our system would simultaneously put in 3 different requests. It would put in one for the printed silicon, one for the printed engineering circuit, and then one for the advanced processor. And the problem that we could run into there is that if the autocrafter tries to put, for example, a diamond and a silicon into the circuit fabricator at the same time, the circuit fabricator can get clogged and then it's not going to do anything. And so what we want to do is we want to change the lock mode to lock until all outputs are received. What that does is it will request one item, for example, the printed silicon, and then it won't put any other items into the circuit fabricator until it gets the printed silicon back. And then the same is true for the printed engineering circuit. It will send one diamond, and it won't try and put another recipe into the circuit fabricator until it gets the printed engineering circuit back. And so now, if we go to advanced processor, and we try to request a few of these, we do need more processor binding. Again, thankfully, that is one that we can just teach to our regular autocrafter, like this, encode, place that in here. And so now if we try one more time for that advanced processor, let's say I wanted 6 more of these, like so, and we click start, it's going to go ahead and send individually all the items required over. It's going to send the silicon, it's going to send the diamonds, and then once it has everything, it's going to go ahead and make the final products. And so in theory, that should just go ahead and make everything that we need it to make. We have immediately run into a problem where it's put in one printed engineering circuit and then has not put the other items in, and our autocrafter is locked, which is not ideal. Let me quickly get another grid here. If we get an autocrafting monitor, this is going to give us an idea as to what the problem currently is. It is going to cost 2 autocrafters to do this, but I think it's worth the investment. Let me put this down right about here for now. Whoops, that's not the right item. This is the autocrafting manager. I want the autocrafting monitor. The autocrafting manager is useful for us to have. The autocrafting manager here lets us see all of our autocrafters. And so in the future, if we wanted to put another pattern in here, we can do that through the autocraft manager. The same is true over here as well. Like if I take this out, we could put it in like this, and it saves us having to go and find the specific autocrafter. But what I actually wanted was the autocrafting monitor, because here we can see that the autocrafting is locked and that's caused a problem. Let me cancel that craft and let me take this out of here. That is locked. Let me try resetting that. I'm going to try the same craft again. I don't see why it's going to behave differently, but just to kind of test it, if I request, let's say 3 of these, start, does that work? It doesn't work. It puts in one item and stops, which is unfortunate. Let me try doing this without the locking mode. It might not be necessary. If we set it to locking never, and then we try again after we've canceled the recipe, let me try 3 or 4 of these, start. Does that work, or does that put the wrong items in the wrong slot? The test completed, so maybe we don't need to use locking mode here. There are some machines in the future where locking mode will come in useful for us, but it's possible that the circuit fabricator here is not one of those machines. We'll keep an eye on it going forward, of course, and if that changes, we can always revisit it. Also, one thing we can do, of course, is we can put a facade down right here to cover up that cable and make it look just that little bit nicer. But now, going forward, we have access to the ability to autocraft really anything we like. We can make more of these autocrafters and place them down to give us more autocrafting capabilities. And of course, we have the ability to autocraft with machines as well, like we're doing with the circuit fabricator here. What I will do real quick before we wrap up for today is I will go ahead and teach our system how to make the other processors that we need. So we'll teach it how to make the basic processor. We'll also teach it how to make the improved processor. And then finally, as soon as we request some more patterns here, let's say 10 and start, we can go ahead and encode this, and then finally teach it how to make the printed logic circuit as well, encode. And then in here, we can put all of those directly into, it says some machine block. I do actually wonder if we can rename the autocrafter. In here, I edit this. I'm going to call this circuit fabricator. And so now when we go back over to our crafter manager over here, we should be able to see that it's called Circuit Fabricator, and that just makes it a little easier as we go forward because we don't want a bunch of autocrafters that just say some machine. It is much easier if we know exactly which machine that's on. But now, in theory, we can go ahead and request all of these. So if I request one of those start and one of these start and one of these, all three of those tasks should get completed, and that makes our lives just a whole heck of a lot easier going forward because again, now if we wanted to craft something like the autocrafter, we can just request half of the items here and we don't have to worry about doing it manually. Speaking of which, we could also go ahead and get even more blank patterns, place those in to our pattern grid. Also, one thing we could do actually is we could get an exporter like this, and we could put that exporter down on our pattern grid like so. The benefit of doing this, we do have to connect that up like so, but the benefit of doing this is that we can now export blank patterns to the pattern grid. So now whenever we request them, they're going to be automatically exported to the pattern grid and we don't have to move them over manually. What we can then do is we can then teach our system how to make the machine casing and how to make the steel casing. And again, this is just going to make it that little bit easier for us in the future to make more things from refined storage and to expand out our network as we progress further into the pack. Real quick, I'm going to claim all of my rewards because we have a ton of them that we have not claimed. That takes us up to 1,189 bucks. Next time we'll come back, we will look at potentially expanding out our autocrafting a little bit, maybe including some of these machines over here. But I think crucially, we're going to go back to the Echoes of History questline, and we're going to start to finally continue our work on progressing through the next chapter of the quest book. I did think it was worth taking a bit of a detour to improve our storage situation because it was really starting to become a bottleneck for us in pack progression. But now that we have wireless access to all of our resources and we have access to basic autocrafting, I think it's actually going to make us a whole lot more productive in the coming episodes. But of course, that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of StoneBlock 4 there.